Chapter 5. There'll be a reason. The story is told by Mary. What do you think it means? I asked. Nathan had been sent to wash, and Abigail and I were sorting through the work we'd done that day, gathering up the piles of coarse wool and the spun yarn and putting it all away in big baskets. Ma was supervising Abby, slapping her hand when she was careless, sighing as she noticed a hole in one of the baskets. "Something special," said Abigail, sitting back with an unusually serious expression on her face. "God made it happen." Ma pursed her lips. "Maybe so," she said carefully. Just then Reuben came in, closely followed by Josiah, Joseph's younger brother. Reuben stomped around across the room and seized the loaf of bread from the table, tearing off a big strip, stuffing it in his mouth. He handed another to Josiah. "Reuben!" exclaimed my mother, "not with dirty hands." Josiah put his piece of bread down and wiped his hands quickly. But Reuben pulled a face and went on chewing. Ma raised her eyebrows. Slowly, with a sneer, Reuben wiped his hands on his clothes. Each finger left its own broad track of dirt. My mother shook her head. "Have you heard the news?" "Yeah," he grunted. "So what? It's just a baby. Another mouth to feed." He swallowed, took a drink of water straight out of the jug, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "But there'll be a reason," said Abigail before I could shush her. "Of course there isn't," cried my brother, suddenly animated. He ran his hands through his hair. "What, you think God has specifically chosen our aunt and uncle to have some kind of special child? Of course he hasn't." "But," Abigail's bottom lip was quivering, "but it's like Sarah and Abraham." "Look," said Reuben, "maybe God really did do all those things years and years ago. Maybe he really did speak to Abraham and Moses and Elijah and gave children to people and win battles and make cities crumble and choose kings and all the rest of it. I'm not saying he didn't. But he doesn't do that now. We're on our own, for goodness sakes. Abigail, don't be such a baby. There is no deep meaning in things. Zechariah and Elizabeth just got lucky." Abigail was now in real danger of bursting into tears. "Stop it," I said to my brother. "You're the one that needs to stop it, Mary," he spat, filling her head with all those stories. "She needs to live in the real world, the world of harsh winters and rocky fields and bread that doesn't taste of anything." He glanced down at the loaf beside him with a grimace. "Some people don't have any bread at all, young man," began my mother indignantly, and Reuben groaned. "That's exactly my point," he said. "We're supposed to be God's chosen people, but we are poor. We're like the dirt on someone's shoes. And meanwhile the Romans run everything and the Greeks live in the lap of luxury practically on our doorsteps." He threw up his hands. "What's the point of going on about the past when now is such a complete nightmare?" Josiah, who stayed silent so far, was nodding eagerly. "It's time to act," he said. "Reuben, this is what I've been telling you. We need a new king. All we have to do is go." But Reuben kicked his friends before he could finish the sentence. He shoved Josiah out of the door, shaking his head, and then went out himself. He paused before ducking under the intel. "Don't take that idiot seriously," he said. "New king indeed." He spat on the ground. "Seems to me it would be better just not to be part of our people at all. My rock was large and flattish and much more comfortable than it looked. I always sat there when I wanted to be alone, walking just a little way uphill from the house and settling myself down where no one could see me. I was listening to the insects in the trees and enjoying the cool evening air on my face, trying to forget the cross words and tears and tensions back in the house. There is no rock like our God, I found myself singing softly as I leaned back against the stone. What was the rest of the tune? I hummed it, and gradually the words threaded themselves together in my mind, remembering from some synagogue service or childhood lesson, there is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one beside you. There is no rock like our God. What song was it? I wondered. Who sang that song first? I kept singing, then broke off as my heart thudded. Of course, I whispered. It's Hannah's song. It was a strange coincidence. Hannah was another woman in the old stories who thought she would never have children. She was taunted, disgraced, unhappy, just like my great aunt. Desperate. And when she went to pray for a child, the priest assumed she was drunk and told her off. But God heard her prayer and loved her, and she had a son and named him Samuel. I sang her song all the way through. Then I sang the last line again. He will give strength to his king. An odd thing for Hannah to say, I suddenly thought, because God's people didn't even have a kin at that point. Pondering, I looked up to see my Ba standing over me. He had a strange smile on his face, sort of sad and affectionate at the same time. Samuel was given to Hannah, I told him, and he was special. When he grew up, he was the one who crowned the first king of Israel. Hannah sang about it. She knew about it or imagined it somehow, even when Samuel was only a tiny baby. She knew that that was what God gave him to her for. He came to prepare the way for a king. I looked into his face, wondering if he'd know what I was getting at, that maybe Zechariah's child would be the same, that he would come to prepare the way for something, that he was special like Samuel. But Ba just said, yes, that's a good story. He took my hand and pulled me to my feet. Mary, I have some news that concerns you. Me? My heart thudded again. Why was Ba's face so serious? I've been speaking with Joseph's father, he began, and that was how I found out that Joseph and I would be married.